Happy Hump Day. It is February the 21st. Man, the year's flying by faster and faster each and every year. Inventory's low, getting multiple offers. I'm sure it's like this across North America. Who are you talking to? Who are you prospecting? Let's role play. We just took a listing off of an online lead, $3.3 million 2 days ago. It was the result of consistent nurturing and follow-up that had us take a listing from an online lead. It's all hard work, whether you're door knocking, whether you're calling online leads, whether you are doing an expired listing for sale by owners, for rent by owners, your past client center of influence. Follow-up is the key. What do we want to role play today? Let's go.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm new here. I literally just joined, so I'm not exactly sure what is supposed to take place or what's supposed to happen. So,
Well, I appreciate you being here first and foremost, 7 o'clock in the morning or wherever you are, Eastern time, then it's 10 o'clock. Welcome. We come here to ask questions and to role play any objection handlers, any scripts that you've been working on that you have been having some, challenges with, is something that you can overcome to get you closer to an appointment and to a contract. Mr. Aaron Novello, good morning.
Wow, that was such an eloquent way. That was such an eloquent way to describe that, John Tsai. He's the man. Hey, everybody, turn your cameras on and stop being a wimp. We're not undercover agents. You got to get used to being on camera. There you go, Ross. Come on, you're gonna hide that smile and those glasses from me, bro. What are you doing? Ken's trying to hide that beard from me. Come on, bro. This shit is on point. You don't quaff that thing to keep it quiet. Let's go, team. Yeah, so here, people just have questions about hey, I'm going on a presentation. I think they're gonna ask me about the commission. What should I say? Or hey, when I'm calling people, I keep getting hung up when they say this to me. And then me, John, or Jose, we'll kind of give you a little bit of guidance.
I have a question, Aaron, if you could help
me.
Yay,
Carol has a question. Everybody clap it up. Yay.
I've been getting a lot of people that are paralyzed with decisions, being overwhelmed with phone calls, being overwhelmed with what they can do. And I just want to see how I can tie them down.
So the first thing that's really important to recognize is that instead of feeling frustration, you should feel empathy, because all of you guys on this call are equally as paralyzed and have a hard time making decisions. I'm going to say that to you again, not because you didn't hear me, but because it's true. When you guys are faced with a big decision, you hem, you haw, you hesitate, you ask all your friends, you wait 6 months, then maybe you do something. So if I can recognize it in myself, it's very difficult for me to judge it in other people. So instead of feeling hey, how do I get these people to stop being afraid? It's hey, I'm afraid too. It's normal and it's natural. So if I'm speaking to somebody hey, I'm really not sure what to do. And I'm hey, look, that's okay. My job's to help you. It's never to talk you into doing anything. And I know when there's a big decision, sometimes I can really kind of hesitate, imagining that if I think it through, that it'll make the decision easier. Usually doesn't. It usually kind of confuses me a little bit. So I guess I'm wondering, what I'd like to do is just ask you a couple quick questions in hopes that doing so can help you to get clarity about what's most important to you. So that way you can decide what you feel is best. And whatever you decide to do, whether it's to sell or to not to, I'll support you 100%. Fair enough? Now notice, Carol, what am I doing in that opening statement?
Well, you're assuring them that it's okay not to have a decision right now.
Yes. And think about that, how that energetically feels versus well, now's a terrific time and you should be thinking about it. What is somebody going to do when you do that?
They're going to shut down, because that's what I've had recently. Yeah.
Yeah, because of the approach. You see what I'm saying? So by recognizing yeah, dude, it's cool. I understand. I do the same thing. You know what I mean? I oftentimes find, though, that if I can maybe talk it through or have somebody ask me some questions to help me to get clarity, then it makes the decision easier to make. So what I'd like to do, if you're okay with it, is just ask you a couple quick questions. My intention in doing that is not to be nosy, just to see if I can help you in some way. And then whatever you decide to do, if you decide to sell or you don't, that's perfectly fine. Will that be okay?
Okay.
And they're like, yeah, that's fine. So tell me, I mean, your home's lovely. It's in a great geographic area. I don't need to tell you that. Great schools. If you don't mind me asking, was there any particular reason you were even considering selling it? Let them talk to you. Now they're going to tell you, well, my neighbor's an asshole. Or, well, we want to get in a better school district. Or, well, we just had another baby and we really only have we don't have enough space. Or, well, my mom's coming to live with me and she's going to have to share a room with my kids. Okay. And tell me this, because I know that's not optimal, that she share a room with the kids. My intention asking this next question, not to be nosy again, just to see if I could add any more information that could be helpful, useful. Your children right now, currently, how old are they? And they're like, well, they're teenagers. I'm like, So having them in a room with their grandma is probably not optimal. She's like, well, yeah. It's like, okay. And let me ask you this, because I know it's not optimal. At the same time, I know it's not forever. So do you think that it's a realistic expectation that she could live there for the next, 4 or 5 years and it'd be okay? Be quiet.
Okay.
No, I just think we're going to lie at each other. Okay, so that's not a realistic expectation. And is there another place for her to go in the home? No. Okay. And is it an option for you to perhaps maybe pool some resources and help her get another one? No. Okay, so it sounds like in order for you to really accomplish what you want, it would require you to get another living situation. Now, my next question is do you have capital separate from the equity in your own home to be able to find her another living situation? No. Got it. So in order to make this happen, you would have to sell the property. So tell me this. It sounds like internally, from a practical perspective, you recognize that this makes sense. So tell me what the internal resistance is. What are you afraid of? And then be quiet. Well, I'm afraid that if I sell my house, I won't find something else. Okay, and I understand that fear and concern. Let me ask you this. Let's say that there was a way that we could get your home under contract and put a provision in the additional terms and conditions that states that it's contingent upon you finding another home in the next 60 to 90 days. And if you don't, you won't have to sell it. Is that something you'd be open to? Wow, I didn't know you could do that. Yep, you can. And based on what we've just discussed, it sounds like it really makes sense for us to connect to really discuss this further in detail. So may I make a suggestion? Sure. Well, based on what you've been kind enough to share with me, Carol, I'm hearing a couple things very clearly. Number one, it's really your preference to get it sold. You recognize that long term, you're doing something out of the kindness of your heart for your mother, which is an admirable thing. At the same time, it's going to create some friction, right? Because you have teenagers and they're in the same room and they would have to share a room. So you recognize that this is a move that makes sense for you and your family. The second thing I'm hearing from you is the more information you can gather about specifically how to go about doing that and decrease the risk that you're concerned about, which is if you sell it, you won't find something else to purchase, the better equipped you'll be so you can decide what you feel is best in terms of how to proceed. So what I'd like to do is this, Carol, and I wouldn't mind because I'm in your area all the time anyway. I'd love to have the opportunity to pop by, take a look, see what it has to offer. And while I'm there, I'll show you a couple things very clearly. Number one, if, and I'm clear that that is an if, we did decide to proceed and sell, what would be top dollar for your home? And net bottom line, what the proceeds would be to you when it all shakes out that we can take with us to the next purchase. The second thing I'll show you is I'll bring with me some properties that are currently active on the market that fit the criteria that you're looking for, which I'll ask you some questions about before we connect. And then I'll also talk to you and show you examples of that provision that we can put in the additional terms and conditions and how we've helped other clients in the same set of circumstances and how it worked out for them. And then at least this way, Carol, whether you decide to sell or you don't, you'll have all the most important information you need so you can make the decision that you feel is best in terms of how to proceed. Does that sound fair to you? Yes. Now notice she smiled at the end and was like, this guy knows what the fuck he's talking about. So let me ask you this. How is that different than what you were doing?
Well, I was basically trying to commit them to just an appointment and they would be like,
hey, and let me ask you a question. Who is that about?
Well, that's really about me.
Yes, it is. So you are being selfish. Ta-da! And notice, what was I doing?
You were making it all about the prospect.
All about them All
Yeah.
about what your goals and objectives are, acknowledging that it's perfectly okay if you decide not to sell, coming from a place of contribution, trying to add value to you, giving you information so you can make decisions that you feel are best in terms of how to proceed.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to try it.
I want everybody on this call to hear me. It's one of agents fall into, which is where they make it about themselves and then wonder why people don't respond. And then imagine that it's like, oh, I need some magical like concoction of words. No, you need to change the internal approach. Does that make sense? Good. Hey, everybody, welcome Jose. He's so cute, bro. His cheeks are getting smaller. He's been working out, so good for him. What's up? We got Dylan in the room. What's up, Melissa?
So,
Hey, you like that? That's what I get early in the morning. What's up? All right, who's next, bro?
Yeah, me next, Vic. All of you from
What up?
Canada, Ontario. I got a question. So I got a listing up here in Innisville, the full bungalow. And let me just, I'm on two.
Hey, I'm not
Right.
gonna buy it. Tell me all the fucking amenities.
No, I'm not telling the amenities. I'm just
I know, I'm
asking.
kidding. Bro. You're
Right.
like, hey, we got a bungalow and it's got a lovely backyard. I'm like, okay, good. Like, let's get to the fucking.
So what happened? My clients, we got up for listing and we have a tenant in there living there right now. So he's willing to move and everything, but my client is getting frustrated because he want him out and it's like all clustered up and everything in there. So he's telling me that I got 2 weeks to sell this property. If you don't sell it in 2 weeks, we're gonna take it off, try to get this guy out of there and put it back on the market.
Okay. Well, tell me this. What is his motivation for selling? Why?
Because it's renewing in April.
When you say renewing, what does that mean? The lease is renewing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why does the owner not want to be a landlord anymore?
He just want to sell the property. He just want to get rid of that tenant. And
I asked underneath, what is he trying to, what pain is he trying to avoid? What pleasure is he trying to move towards? Like, what is the reason?
he just want to sell the property and get rid of
Okay.
it.
Here's part of the issue, Vic, and I mean this lovingly. You actually don't know.
Exactly.
That's a problem. Because you don't know, you can't use it as a mechanism to have a conversation to help him to self-discover what's in his best interest. So simply because somebody tells you that they want to sell, that's not enough. I need to know the who, what, where, when, and why. So like, tell me this. And my intention asked is not to be nosy, just to see if I could give you any more information that could be helpful or useful. I mean, it's rented. It seems to be working out for you. If you don't mind me asking, was there any particular reason now in 2024 of February you decided it's time to sell it? What would be the benefit to you personally if you did sell it? How would your life improve in some way? If you don't mind me asking, like, is your intention to reallocate the capital into a different asset? Or is it to just, pay debt? Like, what are you looking to accomplish? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The fact that you don't know prevents you from actually having conversations with him about what to.
You froze. Repeat that. You just.
Yeah. So do you see what I'm saying? Like, the fact that you don't know prevents you from having conversations with him about what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would do is I would go back to him and start asking questions. Like when people start giving me demands like that, they're trying to like lower your status. And it's like, look, dude, that's like telling a doctor, I'm giving you 2 weeks to fucking figure this shit out. Otherwise, I'm like, what are you talking about, bro? It's ridiculous. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So instead, it's like, look, listen, I understand the urgency. The more that you're willing to share with me, the better equipped I am to provide you with information that could be helpful or useful. Because here's what I find. I help a lot of sellers in these dynamics, and they have this interesting kind of duality going on, which is that they don't want to let the tenant go because they'll have to let income go. But they also recognize that simultaneously with the tenant there, it's harder to sell.
Yeah.
And what I'm aware of is a double-minded man is no good in either direction. So my question to you is which one is your preference, to keep this as a rental or to endure a little bit of short-term pain, which is to have it be empty for a little bit in order to get it sold? Like, what do you actually want to do? And then be quiet. And then let's say he's like, he wants to sell it. You're like, okay, good. And then if you don't mind me asking, because it is rented and I know we can rent it again, like it's not an issue. What would be the benefit to you personally if you did sell it? And then be quiet. How would your life improve in some way if you sold it? And then be quiet. And this is gathering all this information. If you're not muted, mute yourself because I can hear what's going on in the background. So this is you gather all this information so how they proceed. Does that make sense? You can unmute yourself now, Vic. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, bro.
Okay, so what's your actionable step? What are you going to do right after we get off this call?
I'm gonna call him and ask him all this question.
That's the way to go, Vic. Don't be a little baby. Call him up and ask him the questions.
Yeah.
Way to go,
Hey
Vic.
Vic, the other thing, I had questions about like the actual tenant situation. What's the issue with the tenant? Is it that they're not cooperating with showings? Is it what's the issue with the tenant?
They cooperate with the showing, but they're not letting the client, them, and the agent come in and make them feel comfortable. I told them, you guys just go in the backyard and let them have their space.
Yeah, I know, but like the other part that's happening here is both you and the seller are complicating this. Like, don't fucking get in the way of like now, like somebody's gonna come in and be like, you have to go in the backyard. Like, imagine I came to you, Vic, and was like, hey, bro, you got to go in the backyard when somebody's here. You would give me one of these. Exactly. You'd be like, nope, that's not happening.
Yeah.
So instead, like, make it easy, bro. You're complicating. Like, I would reach out to the tenant right away and say, like, hey, just so you know, my name is Aaron. I'm a local real estate agent. The seller, John Smith, he hired me to help him with the sale.
Mhm.
I want my intentions to make this as smooth and easy as possible for you with as little bit of friction as possible and as convenient as possible. So what I'd like to do is go over with you a few things in terms of like process, ask you a couple questions, and then we can take it from there. Would that be okay? And they're like, yeah, that's fine. Here's my question. Did you do that?
No.
No.
So-
So wait,
Hey,
Vic, so let me get straight. I want to be clear, okay? We didn't ask questions in terms of why they want to sell. So we have no idea. We also didn't speak to the tenant up front.
No.
So my desire might be like these tenants and this seller and blah, blah, blah. But who's the real fucking issue here? This is the interactive part, Vic. Who?
Me?
Yes. Now, do you notice that everybody he resisted saying me? That is human nature. In the Bible, it says we would prefer to be lied to than to be told the truth.
Yeah.
We want to make it everybody else's fault. But the truth is that I didn't do what was required, and that's why there's this problem. Do you see?
Yeah.
So by you look, little boys blame. Men take ownership and responsibility and change it. So like, just take ownership of it. I got it. Okay, I get it. I see where I messed up. I won't do it again. I'm going to call the seller. I'm going to call the tenant. And then I will, see what shakes out. But that's really what's going on here, bro.
And I think that, and this is an important point, I think that what you're bringing up, Aaron, is that most agents don't understand or practice how to deal with tenant occupied situations. And that's a skill, basically. Meaning when I say a skill, the conversation, like you have to have a process. So every time, whenever we take a tenant occupied listing, the moment we take the listing, as long as the owner gives us permission, we're connecting with the tenant and having a conversation with them. The other thing is that if the owner tells me like, hey, I want to have the conversation with them, we would rather have the conversation with them. And the reason we would rather have the conversation with them is we're less attached to the outcome. And we understand the process better as to how things are going to shake out. And if you let the tenant and the owner not talk to each other, but basically communicate with each other, there may be some more emotions flying around of previous stuff that has happened to either one of them. The other thing I was going to say is like, we just had a situation where, or two situations where the lease wasn't up until June 30th. And on the lease agreement, it says no showings until April 30th if the owner wants to sell. But yet we have the home on the market in February, and we actually have a showing happening this Saturday. So how are we able to do that? The way we were able to do that is by communicating with the tenant, having a conversation with them, and then we're actually incentivizing them a little bit monetarily as well, too. So we're not giving them a break on the rent. We're not giving them a discount or money allowance at the end of the agreement. Once the property is sold, if they cooperate through all showings, we're giving them X amount of dollars. in order to be able to accomplish that and
Right.
to allow us to break the lease as well too. So in some cases, when the owner doesn't want the property vacant, you may have to draft up some sort of cooperation agreement where you compensate the tenant $2,000 as long as they cooperate with everything to make things work.
And what I love about that, Jose, is like what Vic was doing was an approach of like, yeah, go outside because I say so. That, guys, that doesn't work.
Well,
Instead, incentivizing humans. Hey, listen, you know what? And speaking to the seller, like we came up with something because I'm aware it's a little bit inconvenient. There's a little bit of friction. So, you know, to really incentivize you to, you know, work with us to help us to get this property sold, and recognizing that there is a little bit of an inconvenience for you. What the seller's willing, what the homeowner's willing to do is, you know, provided, you know, showings go smoothly and, you know, we get access, you know, within reasonable notice, like 24 hours and things of that nature, that at the culmination of the transaction, he's willing to give you $2,000 or he's willing to reduce the, like whatever, however you want to structure it.
Not reduce the rent.
Oh, yeah. Don't reduce the rent. So, but that's a look, you have to be very careful how you incentivize humans because it shapes behavior.
100%.
There's a reason why you give dogs treats to do things. There's a reason why. So like use that, right? And that's like an intelligent way of coming to that instead of like, well, there's a tenant, they're being a pain in the ass. We're trying to dictate to them what to do. We're telling them to go outside when there's showings. We're telling them to get out of the way so I can sell the property, which you're not going to fucking sell it. The house sells itself. You know what I'm saying? Like you're just making this more.
And just to clarify, the reason why you're offering the money at the end is because of that incentive. Like, let's say you offer somebody $500 a discount a month in rent, you're incentivizing them with lower rent. They're going to be like, I want this thing to last forever. Like, I want this to last for a year. You know, I don't want to do that. The other thing is that if you're crediting them an allowance up front, you're giving them the reward before the act is complete. So you want to wait until the act is complete because you want to have that carrot to be able to dangle at the very end. The other thing, and this is what the people that we had that we actually got into escrow yesterday, is in the first conversation with them, I actually told them, look, I want to make this as least inconvenient as possible. Same thing that Aaron told the tenant, because you got to remember, whenever you're having these conversations with the tenants aren't receiving any financial benefit for you selling the property. So what's their incentive? So if they don't have a financial incentive, unless you give them one, you got to try to make things as easy as possible for them, because if not, you're just causing a disturbance in their life. So what I told them is, and we do this for all of our tenant occupied properties, we have a 3D tour on the property with the Matterport 3D tour. And the reason we have that is we want to vet out all the looky-loo buyers so that we're not basically bringing in people that are never going to buy the property. So one of the requirements for some of the tenant occupied properties is you have to look at the 3D tour. And in some cases, you have to look at the 3D tour. If you like it, you have to make an offer subject to inspection. And if you make an offer subject to inspection, then I can get you in the property. And that's exactly what happened with this property. They made an offer subject to inspection. The owner liked the offer. We opened up escrow. Now they're getting access to the property. But the only reason they were able to do that was because they were able to see the Matterport 3D tour. And those 3D tours are so realistic. So the goal was to cause as little inconvenience to the tenant as humanly possible. And you communicate that to the tenant, and then you do it. So now I have a really good relationship with the tenant, because the tenant's like, dude, I have had one showing. They're offering me money to move out early and to break my lease. This has been a great experience. You know, you got to remember the tenants are part of the process too. And part of the process is to try to provide not only a good experience for your customer, but also other people involved in the transaction, which the other person involved is a tenant.
Yeah. And that tenant could potentially become like a customer in the future. So like the underlying thing is, initially when you presented, you were presenting as though the tenant was a nuisance. And what me and Jose are saying is like, no, they're part of the process and they're a potential customer. So by incentivizing them, by making it easy, by making like creating less friction, and Jose did what he said he was going to do. It was like easy. It wasn't complicated. He's like, oh man, so if they ever need help in the future, they're going to call him.
Yeah, great tips. Thanks, guys.
Are you doing the 3D tour right now?
You know
No.
the answer to that. Come on, man.
I would do it on every single tenant occupied property because here's the
Hey,
reason.
so let me get this straight, Vic. You've done very little. It's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, no. It's like, okay, well.
Come on, let's give Vic a break. Come on, Novello. You don't got to be.
Nah, come on, man. This is the hot.
Come on, Novello. Come on, just give him. Come on.
You know how long it takes him to shave that beard? He can take it, bro. Come on.
All right. So I do that on all the tenant occupied properties, Vic. And the reason is, okay, what happens if during the showing process, the tenants say, F you guys, I'm no longer showing the property. Like, how are you going to show the property now if you don't have a 3D tour and the tenant says, I'm no longer showing the property, evict me? It's actually a form of insurance. So during COVID, we couldn't evict people in California. And the only way you could evict people in California was if you had an offer by an owner occupied person. So we had a tenant who wasn't paying. And I told the owner, look, I only need access one time to the property. If you give me access one time, I'll sell this property for you. During this one visit, I'm going to take a 3D tour and I'm going to take a 3D tour and I'm going to take pictures. During that one visit, I took the 3D tour and the pictures. Sure enough, that was the only showing that the tenant allowed. And he said, you guys can't do nothing about it, whatever. With the 3D tour, we found an owner-occupied buyer. We then proceeded to hire an attorney for the eviction. The tenant thought he couldn't get evicted, but he didn't know that exit clause that if it was an owner-occupied buyer, you could actually evict him. They got evicted. And because we had that 3D tour, that saved our butt because otherwise nobody would have been willing to write that offer without the 3D tour because they wouldn't have known what the floor plan is like and the exact condition of what the condition is actually like.
Guys,
so it's a form of
game that you're getting for free.
So it's a form of insurance. The 3D tour, I get it, but it's almost like insurance in case the tenant stops cooperating. So yes, I'm paying $300 or whatever I'm paying for it, but it's insurance in case the tenant stops cooperating. I have that as insurance, basically, that I could still sell the property even without their cooperation.
Good points.
All right, Vic has been sufficiently sufficient. Hey, no, don't. Good points. You should be jumping up and down, bro, clapping. You know what I'm saying? That is beyond good points, brother. That is the fucking answer to your problem. Like, oh yeah, that was interesting. No, that was amazing.
Yeah,
that's exactly.
That was amazing. That's good point.
You know what I'm saying? There you go, brother. Show up, man. Come on, man.
Jeez, Louise.
Another thing, another question. Like, if I got a agent and with a client buy the property, can they kick out the tenant in there if they own it after that, closing and everything?
You're talking about in California or in Canada?
It depends on. So if there's a lease in place that's for another year, they have to honor the lease, bro. You can't just kick them out.
Month to month right now they're doing, right? So
yeah, that's fine. If it's month to month, then the lease would transfer as month to month. And if the new owner wants to raise the rent, they can, and then they would have to leave if they didn't want to pay.
Okay.
And I would also be authentic and straightforward with the tenant because that's what they're worried about. I would say, hey, you know, what I'm aware of and my intention in sharing this with you is just to equip you so you're clear on kind of next steps for you and your family. Because again, I want to make this as smooth and easy as possible. Is currently right now your lease is month to month. So if we procure a buyer, the lease would transfer to the new owner. And then it's up to them if they want to continue to keep renting the property or not. So there is a chance that would happen. There is a chance that perhaps they could be like, right? So what I would be doing is just preparing yourself for that. It usually takes 60 days to procure a contract, another 30 to 45 days to close. So we have like, let's say 4 months. And, you know, with the expectation being that more likely than not, the new owner's either going to raise the rent or want to move in. So, you know, I'd be just kind of thinking about that and thinking about next living situation. I'm curious, do you need any help or assistance with that? You see what I'm saying?
That's what you're telling the tenant?
100%.
Okay.
Because I'm just like, what? You're going to try to hide it from him?
No.
Hide what from them?
Like the fact that the new owner might decide that they don't want to rent it anymore. It's like, yeah, bro. Like okay, let me ask you a question, Vic. If somebody approached you that way, if that was you in that situation, and they were straightforward and completely transparent with you and gave you information that would help you make a decision that you feel would be best moving forward, how would that make you feel?
Well, at least I get some information is make me feel good, but I gotta step up what to be do next, right?
Of course. So then you may need help with that. But you see what I'm saying? Like, we're approaching this as though like we could just ignore what's important to the tenant. They're an obstacle and like, fuck them. No, that is not the right approach. The right approach is that they're human beings. They need a place to live. They're concerned and they're worried. Great. Let me see if I can offer you some certainty. I can offer you some information, and I'm here to serve and help if I can help. Now, we've had people with tenant-occupied properties. I share that with them, and they ask us to help them either buy another home or rent another property, and we do that. We've had other people that are like, no, I'll figure it out on my own. Great. But I'm appreciative of the fact that you told me. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think where agents run into a little bit of a hiccup, Novello, is that they're like, the owner's like, I don't want the property vacant because I don't want to miss out on the rent. Yeah. And then they're like, but I want the tenant to be cooperative with the showing. So this is the conversation. This is the conversation we have with the tenants. We'll be like, look, the owners, their only job is to basically tell the tenants that basically they've decided to sell, and that we'll explain what the process is going to be like to the tenant. So this is our conversation with the tenant. Mr. Tenant, my name's Jose Morales. As the owner mentioned to you, he has decided to sell the property. So I wanted to have a quick phone call. That way I could answer any questions that you may have about the process and about how all of this is going to go down. Now, I want to just be clear that a lot of times when a tenant hears that the owner is selling, the very first thing that comes to a tenant's mind is, how much time do I have to move out? Like, do I have to move out in 30 days? Oh my God, like what's going to happen to my living situation? That's the very first thought that comes to a tenant's mind. So I'm here to answer that for you. Now, what the owner has expressed to me is he has expressed to me that he is going to do everything he can to try to find an investor buyer who is going to buy the property as an investment. If he's able to find an investment buyer, he's willing to give them preference as long as the dollar amount is very similar to a owner-occupied buyer. Now, if an investment buyer buys the property, there is a chance that he may consider keeping you as a tenant. Now, that's something I cannot guarantee, but here's what I will tell you. Investor clients, whenever they come look at properties, the things that they look at is how cooperative is the tenant. The other thing that they look at is how clean is the tenant. So my advice to you is, if you want to increase the chances of that happening, be as cooperative as you possibly can with the showings and try to maintain the property in good condition, because that increases the chance of somebody wanting to potentially invest in here. Now, here's the thing. We won't know who's going to buy the property until we actually get it on the open market. An owner occupied may consider buying the property, but we won't know that until we put it on the market and we actually start showing the property. Now, if an owner occupied does buy the property, then at that point, here's what I can tell you. I will notify you that an owner occupied person is going to buy the property, and we will work with you on the close of escrow, meaning it's not going to be like, hey, look, you've got 30 days to move out. We will communicate with each other and we will work out something that works for you and also works for the buyer. And then at that point, you will have a minimum of a 60-day notice to move out. And I will include whatever number we agree on the close of escrow. That way it's not a surprise. And that way you're not rushing to move out and you're not in a position where it's like, oh my God, I helped these people with all this work. Now they're giving me 20 days to move out. Does that make sense to you?
No.
And that's the conversation that I have with the tenants. So what I find in that situation, it typically keeps the tenant like, okay, like it answers a question like, how much time do I have to move out? Because sometimes part of the reason they don't cooperate with the showings is they're thinking like, if I cooperate with the showings, that means I'm homeless. The other thing I've expressed in that conversation is, look, there's a chance that an investor buyer may buy it. If they buy it, they're going to be looking at how cooperative you are, and they're going to be looking at how clean you keep up the property. So it incentivizes them to be cooperative with the showings and clean. Be like, I can't help you unless you help yourself. Meaning if you're like not cooperative with the showings, the new investor buyer is going to look at that and they're going to look at like, I don't want a tenant like that. And I also explained to them that if an owner occupied person wants to basically buy the property, then they will have plenty of time to move out because we will coordinate that and we will check in with them. We just won't come to an agreement with the buyer on a 30-day close of escrow without communicating with the tenant. So then we communicate with the tenant, work it out with the tenant, work it out with the buyer, and then put it in escrow. And now everybody's happy.
Absolutely. Amazing tips, man. I love it. Appreciate it.
Hey, notice Novello how when I went on, he said amazing. And when you went on, he said good. I'm kidding. Did he bounce? Oh, no, he's still. All right.
He's still half naked over there somewhere.
Hey, Jose, Ricardo Salazar, quick question. So you only give the 60-day notice after you guys are in escrow and do a 60-day close of escrow?
So it depends how the owner wants to handle it. So if the owner is like, look, I don't want the property vacant. I don't know if the property is going to sell. Like, I don't want a vacant property. We handle it in that manner that I just explained to you. And the moment we go into escrow, that's when we give the notice basically for the tenants to move out. If the owner is kind of like, look, I don't care if the property is vacant. I'm selling it 100%. Then at that point, you can give the 60-day notice at that point. Now, if the property is like a high chance, like a duplex of an investment type of buyer buying it and rents are at market, there's no need to give the 60-day notice. So it depends on what the owner's goals are. And it also depends on what type of property it is. So it's not like a lot of people are like, hey, this is our standard process. We give a 60-day notice immediately all the time. That's not necessarily how it works. It depends. So depending on the situation, Ricardo.
Okay, yeah, I was just asking because 60-day close of escrows are pretty long, but if that's, I mean, I'm just curious, like to know, because I do have a client.
Problem with it.
Okay,
Buyers don't have problems with it.
Yeah,
just to hang up with
we're
me.
Doing a 75-day close of escrow right now, and the buyers have zero problem with it. And the reason is we were able to. So we structured it where we bought out the tenant from the lease. We're giving them $6,000 as a relocation for them breaking the lease early, and we're giving them 60 days after the buyers complete their due diligence period. So it's one of those situations where if the buyer backs out, the owners doesn't have a vacant property basically. So
yeah, that's kind of the situation I'm in right now. I don't like long close of escrows, but you're changing my mind on that.
And what I would point out to you, Ricardo, is when you said that, you said, I don't like.
I know. I know. It's all on me. I just don't like long escrows, but
I said it again. I don't like. And when you pull out the I from it, you have the freedom to come up with scenarios in which, like in that scenario, like Jose was just saying, he is able to really accommodate the tenant. He's able to create a situation where it alleviates their kind of concern about the next living situation. They're getting money and time to be able to move. And then the seller is like, you just extract yourself from the situation.
Well, the way I structured it, guys, is I structured it in a way where it benefits all parties and it reduces the risk for everybody. Meaning, like for the owner, for the tenant, we're not committing to the $6,000 until the buyer completes their due diligence process. But then in order to give the tenant enough time to relocate, we're making a 60-day escrow. Now, we also included that if the tenant chooses to move out earlier, they can move out earlier with a 15-day notice and a prorated rent. If you want a copy of the agreement, Ricardo, let me know and I'll send it to you.
Yeah. And the only way that you come up with that solution, Jose, is they're entirely unattached to any of the terms and conditions in the agreement. You see what I'm saying?
Well,
yeah, I got to get myself out of it. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. 100%. Otherwise, like it restricts the ability to come up with like these completely win-win propositions.
Yeah, and now it's a win-win for everybody, and the owner is protected. And it's the second one. I'm also noticing a trend. I don't know why, but like for a lot of my listings, I would almost say like right now, like 50% of them are tenant occupied properties. And I'm like, are more investors the ones selling their property and just cashing out on their equity right now? And if that's the case, this is a skill that we have to work on, working with tenant occupied properties, working with tenants. It's a skill that if you work on it and get better than other agents, you now provide massive value to all parties involved in this.
Yeah, because think like, let's say you have that skill, you have the kind of ability to structure these kind of win-win situations, you extract wealth, so you have the freedom to do that. And let's say in Vic's scenario, he has this tenant occupied property. They're approaching it in a particular way. It doesn't sell. And then you step in and you know how to deal with the tenant. You have a different approach and you have that freedom to structure deals. Like you'll actually get it closed.
Yep. That's happened on expired listings for me, where the reason they expire is not because of the price. It's because the other agent didn't know how to handle a tenant, or didn't understand like a relocation. Like, because I understood the fact that you can break a lease if you compensate the tenant or work out something with the tenant, it allowed me to get paid in May versus August or September, basically, you know?
Yeah. So is that lease agreement that you have, like, is it all like are there two different types? The one that breaks it, that when you compensate them, and the other that if that they'll get compensated after the close of escrow?
Yeah. So the lease agreement is the agreement that they have with the owner. The relocation assistance agreement is something that we created based on the situation. So basically we have different terms, like, and if you, and better yet, like, I think this is good if we go over it on the Friday call that we have. So on the Friday call, I can explain all the different terms that we have those terms as well too, basically. And it's basically an agreement that I modify just depending on the situation. So I've used it like 3 times. I did it on a listing in probably November where it was rent control in Los Angeles. That one, the owner gave the tenant $30,000 to move out. We did it on another one in Leisure Village. That one, the owner gave him $10,000, and this one, on the most expensive one, he's giving him $6,000 to move out, basically.
Yeah,
it's just a matter of like knowing how it works and then getting creative with it. And then somebody just asked about the Friday call. That is a paid call, or it is a call to our EXP Elite Builder. So if you're interested in that paid call, send me a DM and I'll send you a link. That's the Friday call that we have for all of our EXP partners. But we do allow other people for a call for a price. What do you want to role play, bro?
Expired. Want to go? You want me to go, or you guys want to go? What do you want to do?
I think it's you, buddy. Or I think it's you. You want to do it, Novello, or you want me to do it? Or
whatever. Let's do expired. Do expired. So you got
with Novello. I've been talking too much.
Okay. Ring.
Hello.
Hi, may I speak with Aaron?
Yeah, this is this an agent?
This is Mario. Yeah, it is. Calling in regards to your property on Avocado Street. It sounds like you've been getting a lot of calls today.
Yep. And we're not sure what we're going to do next, but thanks for calling.
Of course. And my job, Aaron, is to help you. It's never to talk you into selling. I guess I'm wondering, looking at your house here, it's nice. It's in a great area. Originally, when you got started, where were you thinking about moving to if the property would have sold?
Yeah, I mean, if we sold it, we were going to move over to Cucamonga, but like, it didn't happen. So we're just going to take it off the market today.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. And, timing is everything. I guess, is that something that's still important to you, or have you folks kind of put that on the shelf for good?
Yeah, again, we're not sure what we're going to do next, but you can call me back in like, I don't know, maybe like a couple months or so.
A couple of months or so. Yeah. And I get it. Look, you were on the market, Aaron, during a time where most folks actually weren't getting the results that they wanted. Being listed back in the last quarter, prices were actually down anywhere from 5 to 10%. So I get where you're coming from. I guess my question is, if you could get a little bit more now that prices have gotten a little bit better,
and folks are getting more money today than they were even last week, would you at least consider that or see what that would look like for you?
I don't know. I mean, we like had on the market for so long, people tramping in and out of the property.
Yeah.
I mean, all you guys are calling me now. Like, how come you didn't like? Do you have like a buyer?
You know what? That's a really good question. If I had a buyer, to be quite honest with you, that's what I would have opened with and let you know. What we do though, Aaron, it's a little bit different from the other agents, is that we specialize in helping folks that were on the market at some point get their property back on the market, change a few things, and we usually get them sold for more than they were originally listed for. So I guess I'm wondering, is this move something that you could see yourself doing, sooner rather than later, if it all made financial sense?
Again, dude, like we're just really overwhelmed. I've gotten, I don't know, 20 calls today, and I mean, we're just gonna take a pause for a little bit. But you seem nice. You're not like pushy like the other ones. So if you shoot me an email, like I'll give you a call and follow up with you.
Yeah, and again, I appreciate that. I'll definitely send you my stuff after this call's over. I guess I'm wondering, is there something, Aaron, that's stopping you or causing you to wait a couple of months before making a move?
All right, time out. So this is good. So clearly you practice, you know what you're doing. It's good. Like you're staying nonchalant. I'm throwing objections at you. You're not getting flustered. Like all that's good. Here's what I'm noticing that you're focusing on price and not on motivation.
You're right.
And that's the problem. And what happens is because you keep bringing it back to price and you're getting stonewalled, like you don't know where to go. You're just like, okay, well, if you could get more. And I'm like, nah, we're just going to wait. You're like, well, what if you knew that now was better and you could get more? And I'm like, nah, we're just going to wait. You know what I mean? You're not actually getting to motivation, which is like, look, my job's to help you. It's never talking to you anything. If you don't mind me asking, I mean, your home's really nice in a great area. Was there any particular reason you were even considering selling it? And I gave it to you. I said, yeah, we're going to move the Rancho Cucamonga. You're like, that's cool. And then you moved on. There, you need to dig. Well, you don't mind me asking, what's bringing you out to Rancho Cucamonga?
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, my mom lives out there. Okay. And is it an option for you to maybe not sell this home and still make the move? Nope. Is it an option for you to rent the home and still move? Nope. And let's say you moved out to Rancho Cucamonga. Like, how would your life improve in some way? Well, like, she needs my help and blah, blah, blah. I see. So it sounds like you really want to get closer to her because she's in a place where, perhaps she needs some help or assistance. And that's admirable, for sure. And I can certainly see why you'd be frustrated when you attempted to do it and it didn't happen. Tell me this, is that still something that's important to you? Or have you come up with another solution for it? And then be quiet. So do you see how by focusing on price and thinking that that's the only thing, you'll get a lot of these conversations will go the same way. But by me focusing on motivation, I can be clear on what's the actual reasons behind the move. Right. And that is the motive to take action is the real thing that's going to dictate whether or not they want to do something or not necessarily how much, if they could get a couple more $1,000.
That makes 100% sense. Yeah. I guess I run out of ways to ask for motivation. So I'm thinking right now that I just got to continue to practice new questions.
Yeah, truthfully, I don't think that that's true. I don't think you run out of ways of asking for motivation. I just don't think you think to do it. Because I gave it to you. I'm like, yeah, we're going to go to Rancho Cucamonga. And you blew right past it. Like, whoop, okay, cool. Like, you didn't even, like, I gave it to you on a silver platter. Here you go. And you're like, yeah, that's cool. I don't want that. Let's fucking keep going. You know what I mean? Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. So it's just like, I don't think, because you don't lack, bro. Like, you put in work, you practice. Like, you're not lacking for the ability to ask questions. You're just not focused on it. But that's the focus, is that will allow you to determine what's really going on. Mm-hmm. And then from there, you can dictate whether or not they're an 8, 9, or a 10 in motivation, and if it makes sense to go into a closing sequence.
Okay. Or even if they're going to be a valid lead for you to follow up with. Depending on what they say in the motivation is going to let you know, like, okay, is this somebody that I want to stay in contact with? Right. Or proceed for an appointment, or is this somebody that I don't, regardless of the price? Like, because motivation fixes price once again. If their motivation is like, so let's say they tell you, well, I've got grandchildren in Rancho Cucamonga, right? And or I've got a job relocation for Rancho Cucamonga, and they're like, well, I'm just going to commute from this point forward. I'm going to commute to Rancho Cucamonga. You're like, that's not going to last forever, bro. You're not going to do a 2 to 3 hour commute every single day, So now like this person's somebody that I want to stay in touch with.
100%. Makes sense. Makes sense.
Good job,
Thank
bro. Just focus on the motivation.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. What up, Nino?
Oh, kind of a
You
similar
got to turn your
question.
camera on. Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of similar question to Ricardo's. How would you handle a situation calling expired or not expired by the potential seller, and she telling me, "Do you have a good buyer?" And I'm like, "Yes, I have good buyers. No real good buyer because I want to sell for 1.5 million. It's a little bit overpriced." And
Hey, it's more than a little bit overpriced.
and
You know what she's really saying to you? Do you have somebody that's gullible that will pay me way more money than it's worth? Like, that's what she's really saying. You know?
True, but of course I didn't tell her that. So first I have to go and see. That's what I told her, and that's how I am securing the appointment. So, question to you is, when I was asking about the motivation, they are thinking to sell and move to Europe, but there is nothing set in stone for them. So their motivation level, would you assess it very low, or maybe she's not telling me the true whole story?
Well, you have to, again, just like ask questions. So it's like, listen, what I'm aware of is you didn't get to where you are in life by not making good decisions and having resources. So I'm curious, because my job's to help you. It's never to talk you into doing anything. Is your motivation to sell this property based primarily on how much you can get, like getting a specific price? And if not, you're willing to wait, a couple of years, move to Europe, leave it here until you can get a price that you feel more comfortable with? Or do you require the funds from the sale in order to make this move and transition happen the way that you want? And then be quiet. Now, if she says, like, why are you asking me that? That's none of your business. It's like, well, I appreciate that. And I want you to be clear, like, my intention in asking is not to be nosy. Surely not. Instead, it's just to find out specifically what's important to you and why, so I can provide you with information that could be helpful or useful. The more you're willing to share, the better equipped I am to provide you with that guidance. Because again, I'm here to help you. I'm not here talking to do anything. Like, let me ask you this. What happens, let's say that you knew that the 1.5 that you would want, that for some reason the marketplace wouldn't support that, and you would have to wait a couple of years before you could get it. Would you be okay with that? And then be quiet. Well, I think I could do it. Well, listen, I hope you can, because the more money we can help you sell it for, the more we get compensated to help you. At the same time, in preparation for kind of this conversation, I did a little bit of homework in terms of what has sold most recently in your community. Do you know that the highest closed sale in your neighborhood in the last 6 months is 1.3 million? Well, yeah, but I have ducks in the backyard, and I redid my kitchen 20 years ago, and blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I have a beautiful backyard and everything.
Oh yeah, I have a beautiful backyard that's very well manicured. That has to be worth 200,000. You're like, no, it's not. So, but you see, by asking, like, just don't be afraid to ask her questions. Like, just because she has a $1.5 million house doesn't mean she acts rationally and practically. She probably doesn't. So, ask questions, be straightforward. In asking them, like, set them up by saying, what I'd like to do is ask you a couple questions, because my job's to help you. It's never to talk you into doing anything. And I want you to know, it's my intention in asking is not to be nosy. It's just to try to determine what's important to you and why, so I can help you to get what you want in the time you want. Does that sound okay? And they're like, yeah. Well, tell me this. What happens on the outside chance if the marketplace wouldn't support the 1.5 million and you'd have to wait, maybe like a year or two to sell it? Would you postpone your move to Europe? And then be quiet. You see what I mean? And then from there, use common sense. Like, based on what she says, that'll lead to like the next logical question. She's like, well, no. Okay. And is it an option for you to maybe rent it out? Because we can help you rent it. And then you move to Europe. Would that work? And then be quiet. Well, no. The other thing for you to think about is people who have like resources or whatever, they're used to getting what they want. And they don't handle not getting what they want very well. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Their mindset is different.
Yeah. So the more you can get like clear on what really is the motivation, the better you're able to serve her. Otherwise, you get into these like nuanced debates about like, well, I think the economy is going to do this, and I think it's going to do that, and I think I could get more. And that's like a loser's game. It's like a loser conversation.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Good job. Yep. Nino's on camera now. Let's go, team. Way to go. What's up, Ilya? All these people down here, no camera on. Angel, what's up, team? Christopher, you're better than that. Salima, what are you doing? Sean. What's up, KJ?
Because nobody's talking, so kind of she also asked me, why are you asking me all these questions? When I asked her, where are you going to move, and what would be your feedback? I told her, I need to know because my buyers need to know whether you're flexible in closing.
I wouldn't do that
or
because it's like,
you have a place to
you know
go.
what I think is interesting, Mina? It's like when we say my buyers, they're not your buyers, bro. You don't own them. It's like they're talking to all different agents. So instead of doing like this posturing, it's like, hey, my intention in asking is the more that you're willing to share, the better equipped I am to provide guidance that could be helpful or useful. What it's kind of like is, let's say you went to the doctor and somebody said I had a headache, and the doctor was like, great, we're going to do surgery tomorrow. Would that be okay? Well, no. You would want them to be thorough and ask questions and really test and do multiple different variations of tests before they prescribe what makes sense to do. Does that make sense to you? Yeah. So that's all I'm doing here, is just trying to figure out how I can help and be of assistance. Now, if people aren't willing to share with you what's true, I don't want to work with them. Because if they're a pain in the ass up front, they're going to be a pain in the ass the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine going to the doctor, and you're like, they're like, what hurts? And you're like,
Okay.
guess. Would that be silly? The answer is yes. It would be very silly.
Sure.
So just
yes,
ask.
of course.
And if she
By
pushes back,
helping,
just
what do you mean by helping? You have a buyer, you bring me the buyer. You don't need to Mhm.
yeah. Well,
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
At the same time, what I'm also aware of is I need to find out things in terms of like time frames and things. What's important to you in terms of like ultimately what your goals and objectives are, because I'm interested in structuring win-win situations where all parties get what they want. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So look, she sounds like and what I'm aware of, she sounds like a pain in the ass, truthfully.
Maybe she is, but
No, not maybe. Okay, that's your decision, but I'm telling you, she's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, she's very emotional. Yeah, that's what I sensed. Yeah.
Yeah, but she's a pain in the ass. So like, you have to make that decision, because what it'll do is you'll go over there, she'll convince you to list it at a price that's too high, then you'll get offers that are lower and she won't accept them. Or you'll tell her that she needs to adjust the price and she'll ask you to do more marketing. I built 2,000 homes in my career. I can spot these personalities from like 2
I know you're
centimeters.
amazing.
You know what I'm saying? I'm telling you, this is who she is.
Thank you. Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah.
Really quick, when you ask, is it an option to wait 2 or 3 years, before you can sell at the price you feel comfortable? And they're like, yeah, we're okay waiting. Do you then just keep going into the motivation, or they're like, oh, I don't have to sell? Do you just keep digging?
Well, I mean, that's a red flag. That's like being on a date with somebody and they get smashed. Like, it's a big red flag. Like a fucking, hey, here's the problem here. You know what I'm saying? If they're like, yeah, I could wait till fucking I die, you're like, okay, that's a problem. But like, if I'm asking questions, let's say to Jose's point, they're like, yeah, I'm commuting 2 hours to Rancho Cucamonga, back and forth, so 4 hours a day. And they're like, yeah, I could wait for 3 years. They're not going to wait for fucking 3 years. Or if they're like, yeah, I can't use the stairs anymore, and I fell down the stairs, so I need to get into a single story, but I can wait. They're not going to wait. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
But if the motivation is money and they tell you they're just going to wait, yeah, big fucking red flag.
Right. So what he's saying is sometimes you got to read between the lines. And the only way you can do that is by asking them questions and being like, okay, like you're commuting 3 hours a day. I've seen, or like recognizing patterns. I've seen this pattern before. Most people who basically commute 3 hours a day and had their home on the market, they're eventually going to put it back on the market because they're going to get tired of selling, basically. So it's just noticing that and being like, okay, like what do most people do in these situations, basically?
Yeah, reading in between the lines.
Well, and it's gauging. What it's really doing is you're gauging probabilities. What's the probability that they're going to wait? You know what I'm saying? What's the probability that they can keep using the stairs? What's the probability? You know what I mean?
Right.
And people will go to extremes. I had a guy that was like, hey, look, I want to sell, blah, blah, blah. He's like, I can't go up and down the stairs. The guy ended up building a bathroom downstairs. Like a full bathroom downstairs where there wasn't a full bathroom, and ended up moving his bed into the living room. People will sometimes go to extremes to do what to basically, but I guess part of the reason he did that is he had a 2% mortgage, you know, and he couldn't get another 2% mortgage. So
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm noticing our time. Let's go be great. When times get tough, only the skill get paid. Skill up, team. Talk to you soon. Elite Builders
there you
Coast to
go.
Coast.
Bye.